But whatever you do, please don't tell me that this thing had nothing to do with race. Even if the shooter says that, he thinks it had to do with his sex addiction. You can't disconnect this violence from the racial stereotypes that people attach to Asian women. This guy blamed a specific race of people for his problems and then murdered them because of it. If that's not racism, then the word has no meaning.
There's more than one way to dehumanize a people. Asian Americans have been subject to oversimplification and erasure for their entire history here. Lauded as silent successes, model minorities, and then abjectly ignored for their vast ethnic diversity and disparate outcomes. As Trevor Noah suggests in a recent episode of The Daily Show, the ambiguous work of classifying a crime as a hate crime is asked too late. The hate crime begins long before the act itself, atmospherically, in the unconscious act of replacing the truly complex stories of people with the criminal inattention of prejudice. I think the novelist and poet Ocean Vuong wonderfully describes the detriment of Asian stereotyping, even when technically positive.
When it comes to Asian American talent in this country, a lot of us are unfathomable. And you think about the two stereotypes of Asian American talent. One, the math whiz. Two, the musical prodigy. When it comes to the math whiz, it's genetic. They're born like that, right? That's the big stereotype. Or they only have it through the unjust parenting of tiger moms, right? So they only have it through this inhumane parenting and regimen, but it's not their own talent, their own agency. When it comes to the musical prodigy, there's a great violinist, a great pianist, but always in service of Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Eurocentric music. So at its best, to be an Asian American artist of talent is to be merely a fine-tuned instrument in service of somebody else's main thing.
The origins of this myth are complex. In the 20th century, Asians, along with other American minorities, made concerted efforts to escape negative stereotypes. But it wasn't until World War II that the US government saw a benefit to itself in rebranding Asian Americans. Historian Ellen Wu explains how depictions of yellow peril were replaced with the model minority myths, specifically among Chinese and Japanese Americans. During World War II, lawmakers thought that Chinese exclusion made for bad diplomacy, so Congress decided to overturn it as a goodwill gesture to China, who was America's Pacific ally. Japan lost the war, and the United States took charge of reconstructing Japan in its own image as a rising democratic capitalist country. And because Japan became such an important ally, that was the moment when Japanese exclusion laws could finally be overturned, which happened in 1952. An article by NPR elaborates. The Chinese were recast in promotional materials as law-abiding, peace-loving, courteous people living quietly among us. In 1965, the National Immigration Act replaced the national origins quota system with one that gave preference to immigrants with U.S. family relations and certain skills. Then, in 1966, William Peterson, a sociologist at the University of California, Berkeley, helped popularize comparisons between Japanese Americans and African Americans. His New York Times story, headlined "Success Story, Japanese American Style," is regarded as one of the most influential pieces written about Asian Americans. It solidified a prevailing stereotype of Asians as industrious and rule-abiding that would stand in direct contrast to African Americans. It's almost trite to have to restate, but stereotyping, even when positive, divides and diminishes its recipients too. And then, of course, there are those outside the myth, the ones most directly impacted by the heinous acts in Georgia, those working in the shadow of tenuous service work with little hope of upward mobility. The man who killed these people, 6 of whom of Asian descent, saw the women as objects of sex, obstacles to his rightful moral superiority, and nothing more. Forgetting that his ability to diminish their inner lives is a direct result of his own racism and the racism of a country. Because I can't say it the way he can, I want to return to Ocean Vuong's story of his mother, who also labored in the shadow of tenuous service work. I want to end here as a reminder, as much to myself as anyone, how vital genuine story is in countering crimes of hate.
The most common English word spoken in the nail salon was sorry. It was the one refrain for what it meant to work in the service of beauty. Again and again, I watched as manicures bowed over a hand or foot of a client, some young as 7, say, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," when they had done nothing wrong. I have seen workers, you included, Ma, apologize dozens of times throughout a 45-minute manicure, hoping to gain warm traction that would lead to the ultimate goal, a tip, only to say sorry anyway when none was given. In the nail salon, sorry is a tool one uses to pander until the word itself becomes currency. It no longer merely apologizes, but insists, reminds, I'm here, right here beneath you. It is the lowering of oneself so that the client feels right, superior, and charitable. In the nail salon, one's definition of sorry is deranged into a new word entirely, one that's charged and reused as both power and defacement at once. Being sorry pays. Being sorry even or especially when one has no fault is worth every self-deprecating syllable the mouth allows, because the mouth must eat.